Hey there, welcome to the Emotional Revolution podcast. I'm Kayla Burch, and I'm here to help you break free from those emotional patterns that keep holding you back so you can step into alignment, reclaim your confidence, and create the life and business you've been dreaming of. So let's get started and begin your journey to emotional freedom. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Emotional Revolution podcast. I'm here with a dear friend, Megan Henderson, and I cannot wait to share her story with you today. She is the CEO and founder of Southern Scribble, a creative marketing agency helping bougie businesswomen radiate online with custom branding, website design, and SEO. She is absolutely a mastermind, but her journey began with $6 in her account and a leap of faith, and she now empowers women to elevate their brands and become industry leaders. Thank you so much, Megan, for being here today.
Yay, thank you for having me, Kayla. I'm honored.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so I want to dig into this conversation, but before we do, I just gave your bio, I gave your introduction, and I want people just to kind of understand a little bit more on the business side, just a brief overview of like, what is it that you do?
Yeah, so at our agency, Southern Scribble, we truly don't believe in surface level branding. So you can have a pretty face, but if you're missing that powerful voice, it truly can impact your brand in a negative way. So what we do and what sets us apart is we develop a unique brand strategy that fits you, whether you're developing a personal brand, whether you're branding for a corporation. We really dive deep and focus on that strategy piece. And then once the strategy is completed, then at that time, we will start developing all of the pretty things like a brand identity, a website design, and then we start getting really techie and dive into that SEO.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And I love how you started off with you don't believe in surface level because you know me and neither do I. So it's a perfect match, right? Surface level doesn't get people where they want to go. So how did you start this? How did you become where you're at today?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey it'll be 5 years in March. I started with $6 in my bank account, like Kayla said. The name of our agency is called Southern Scribble because my business was born out of a passion for hand lettering. So like kind of like calligraphy. So that's where the scribble comes in, and then Southern for like Southern hospitality because I love to smile and I love to be kind and joyful. So that's how I got started. Lots of pivots. Obviously, now we're a marketing agency, and then we also sell LED signs like the one behind me if you're watching video. So the evolution of the hand lettering turned into, well, I hate inventory. I hate having to, keep up with all of this product. So I strategically partnered with a manufacturer that we were able to kind of connect the dots and start scaling it a little bit more. And then with that, I kind of found that I was still wanting to have a creative outlet other than just the LED signs. And since I was a little girl, I've kind of been playing around with like HTML coding and things like that, and just figuring out kind of little tweaks here and there to make things work. So that's how I pivoted from the hand lettering to now LED signs and marketing.
Yeah. What was that pivot like for you? Was that like an easy decision, or was that something that you had to battle a lot with?
No, it was definitely a battle. A lot of it came up for me emotionally whenever I was struggling severely with postpartum depression. I knew that something had to give, and I didn't quite know what the give was. But I ended up giving up my full-time job in that process. So whenever I gave up my full-time job, I still felt like there was a deeper calling, like a deeper knowing of what my purpose was in this earth. And I didn't think that it was just writing things with a pen and paper or writing, here and there. So that pivot from, the first large pivot was quitting my full-time job and battling with the postpartum depression and anxiety. And then there's been several pivots since then.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to focus on that original pivot because I think that's where and I get a lot of questions about this too, of how do you know when to pivot or when to double down on what you're doing and move forward with it? Because I think that's a huge question because sometimes it's hard to know the difference between self-sabotage with the pivot because you're gaining momentum and it's time to pivot, or really when it's time because it's not aligned anymore. So how did you recognize that difference, that it was actually not in alignment anymore and not that you were just sabotaging yourself?
Yeah, whenever I first recognized it after I quit my full-time job, that not necessarily the hand lettering because I loved the creative aspect, but the inventory piece wasn't serving me anymore, was when I just felt frustrated every day. And I was like, this isn't how I want my business to feel. So I really had to do a self check in and be like, okay, what do you actually desire in your business? And kind of move forward from there. I remember having like a true pros and cons list of like, okay, we could do this, we could do this. So really kind of almost elementarizing it, if that's a word, and changing it to where it was like, okay, Megan, we can do this or we can do this. And then, kind of just releasing that self-sabotage, like you said, of like, or my ego really of like, well, they're going to think I quit or they're going to think this. And like, you can't really think about what anyone else thinks because at the end of the day, it's your business, truly. And the only support that I needed was my spouse. And from that point, I just drove it forward and now we're a team together.
That's amazing. So was that easy for you as far as like, let's talk about what you just talked about with the don't worry about what other people think. Like they're going to think I quit. So was that a process for you to have to work through, or are you just kind of naturally like, screw it, I don't care what anybody else thinks about me?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a process. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So disappointing people was very hard for me, and letting that go and still trying to embody that on the daily of, well, what serves me and what is aligned for me, or am I saying yes or to this because so and so wants me to say yes, or things like that. So along the business journey that I've been on, that's continued to show up, and I've had to choose myself over any other thing that kind of popped up for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. So what is it that's helped you? Is there a strategy that you use or just a belief that you lean into that helps you say yes to yourself in those moments?
Yeah, I I try to practice kind of like that self-reflection, like that I was talking about. When I notice that my body feels off about something, or I always say if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And so if my body isn't fully aligned with something, I've really became so aware of that feeling internally. And then I'm like, okay, and allow myself that time to process too, of like, I don't have to respond right away. I can take some time for myself and feel if this is truly a yes or, whatever it may be. And, so that process. And then also I see my therapist weekly. So that's really helpful too, to talk to someone that's unbiased about things happening.
Yeah. And just so, because I think this is so helpful for people to hear so many different perspectives. How do you know in your body when it's a hell yes or hell no? Like, how do you feel that and experience that now that you're much more in alignment than before?
Yeah. It definitely feels like almost like a tension. Like if my body is feeling some type of resistance, it feels like a tension in my chest, or um, like my face, like, Um, so that's how it feels.
Yeah. So what's this is a funny question. What's it like to be a people pleaser? Because you probably have guessed this about me. I've never been a people pleaser. That's never been like my natural like thing, just to please other people. But I think it's so common. It's so common in my clients, and it's so common in entrepreneurship to really lean into that people pleasing tendency. And so what's it like to navigate entrepreneurship and the people pleasing. And I mean that in a way like, what's the difference between when you were people pleasing as an entrepreneur versus now when you lean away from it?
Ooh, that's so good. So I would say before, when I was still heavy in people pleasing, if you look back at the evolution of my business and the pivots that I made, it was truly because of what the people were wanting from me rather than what I felt aligned with. Like, I didn't have the awareness to like look in myself and be like, okay, Megan, what is it truly that you want? So the people pleasing in my business showed up by, asking polls to my audience or, and that can be good too. And as a business strategy, so I don't want to like dog on that, but, if the intention behind it is to seek the validation from your audience, then it might be bringing up some red flags of like, oh, we're getting into that people pleasing mode again. Or posting for validation, like, oh, I really need that ego boost today. Let me post a selfie, or let me post something that will bring in some likes and comments, or, and so now I've really centered my business or like doing that self-reflective talk of like, is this truly in alignment? Is this really what serves me? Is this the way that I want to set my business up so that it serves our family well in the future and the freedom that we desire?
Yes. That is a beautiful explanation of it because it's so hard. And I love what you said, how you broke it down with like really identifying where your ego's coming in and why you're doing the things you're doing. Because when my work, that's all that I talk about with people is why are you doing the things you're doing? Where is it rooted in? What's your conditioning behind it? What does that actually look like and feel like? And so I love that when you talked about the polls aspect of it, that it's like understanding that, yes, that's good for business because you're gathering engagement, you're getting information that you didn't have before. But if you're doing it to validate yourself or to make a decision for you because you're unsure and you don't want to take the responsibility to make the decision, then you're going to end up somewhere that you don't want to be. And that can be really disheartening and confusing and really pull back your business growth.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So, yeah, and it is hard. And it's hard to understand the difference between, because we all have ego. Ego doesn't go away. We can't completely dissolve our ego in our daily life or we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's what keeps me and you, and the difference between it. But it's when it's the non-supportive aspect, that voice in our head that is making our decisions out of fear. Oh, so that brings me, do you feel like you operated a lot out of fear? Because people pleasing, right? So there's the level of fear of not being good enough or not being liked. Do you feel like you made a lot of business decisions out of fear?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Looking back, I definitely made a lot of decisions out of fear of not wanting to fail, fear of trying to make things work so I didn't fail. It took me several years to realize that failure actually doesn't exist unless you quit. So just learning to ebb and flow through the pivots.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I want to talk about the embodiment of Megan today because I've known you for, I would say, a short time. And it's been what I think is after your kind of your pivot and your turning point in your business, right? So I've met the much more confident version of Megan. And so what would you say led you to that? Because it's hard because when I think about you, I think, oh my gosh, this is one of the most confident people that I've ever met. Has it always been like that?
No, it definitely hasn't. I feel like I've had to do a lot of work around the difference between self-confidence and self-worthiness. I feel like I've actually always been confident, but I think the Megan has a lot more self-worth. So looking back, no, I've definitely not had a lot of self-worth. Especially in my business, but I think the pivotal moment or like the catalyst for change was whenever I really dug deep into my own personal human self and, realized my triggers, realized what it is that just doing a lot of that self-reflection and then mirroring it back into my business and being like, hey, this is who we are now. And this is the audience we serve. And if you like it, great. If you don't, then you can find someone else to help you, I guess.
Move along, right? Move along. And
Right.
I think that's such an important aspect. And I ask that too, because I find myself I relate to that because I've told this story many times about my surface level, which we know we don't like that, my surface level confidence. It was my confidence in my external was only there to protect how much I didn't like myself on the internal, how much I hated all of it inside of me, and how that if I really thought someone got to know me, then they wouldn't like me. They wouldn't think I was capable or good enough, and that would ruin everything. So I kept this really strong external confidence that just made people think, oh, this girl can walk into a room and light it up, be the center of attention. And she loves that or owns that. But inside I was crumbling. Inside I doubted myself. Inside I was sabotaging. I didn't feel worthy. And that was really mirrored into my business. And for me, I would get further along and then I'd pull myself back because, I was getting a little too raw and open. And now I was going to expose myself. That surface level confidence couldn't last for too long. And so what were some of the things that you did? What was the catalyst for you? So you said that you started to do this real deep inner work, like you realized you had to do it. What was that catalyst that forced you really to go inward?
So the catalyst for my change actually happened. It'll be 3 years ago in February. If you don't know me already, I had bariatric surgery. So it's like a weight loss surgery that really helps you make a lifestyle change that is appropriate for you. And there's a lot that goes into it. And I'll save that for another day. But 3 years ago in February, I was driving and I was pondering this whole bariatric surgery. And I had just lost my grandpa the year before. And I knew that him and my grandma wouldn't probably agree with my decision to have bariatric surgery. And it was kind of like that people pleasing coming up. Right. So I was driving, I was going to work that morning. And while I was driving, I prayed. I was leaving my neighborhood and I prayed. I said, God, and I don't really pray like this. So I was like, God, if you think that bariatric surgery is the right choice for me, please send me a red bird today. And I was going through my day and it's a regular work day. And I kind of felt frustrated because I hadn't seen my red bird that I had hoped for. And on my way back home, I was entering my neighborhood and I was like, man, I don't understand. Like maybe it's not the right decision for me, and just really pondering that. And then the moment, like when my car arrived to the spot that I prayed in, there was a red bird that flew over the road. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just started crying. And that was the moment for me that I vividly remember that this is my chance for change, not only physically, right? It was a chance to get out of that people pleasing. Because if I would have just listened to my family or whoever, they're like, oh, bariatric surgery is the easy way out, or, all of the things that come up with it, all of the imposter syndrome too. But if I wouldn't have listened to myself and my own self-reflection in that moment, then I wouldn't be the human that I am today and making the impact that I'm able to make. So that was the pivotal moment for change, for sure.
That is a amazing story. I didn't know that story. Thank you for sharing it. I love it. And so when you hear that, or when you say that to me, the thing that really stands out is that it was like when you really started to listen to your own voice. And I think that's such a powerful moment. Like you asked for something and then you saw it, and you saw that in your external. And oftentimes the things in our external are that driver to go back inside. So how did that shift your relationship with yourself and trusting yourself and listening to your own voice?
Yeah. And it's funny because in that moment, it was still out of a people pleasing thing, because I logically signified the red bird as my grandpa, saying, "It's okay, Megan, go ahead. You've got my permission." But it wasn't until probably going through the process and going through, I think I had probably 8 or 9 check-ins. So like the process before I had surgery was probably about 8 or 9 months. And it was during that time that I did a lot of the like, okay, this is my voice. And if you don't like it, then that's on you. And I'm my own being, and I'm pleasing myself, and that's all that matters right now.
Yes. That's amazing. And how did that translate to your business?
To my business, it translated in doing more of the self-reflection on, am I making this decision out of people pleasing and like validating others? Or am I making this decision because it values the time freedom that I want to have? It values location freedom that I want to have. And yeah, it's really transformed the way that I've operated my business coming out of that people pleasing mindset.
And how is that? You've mentioned, like time freedom. And I know it's so funny to think, how has no longer people pleasing? How has that actually created more time and space in your life?
That's such a good question. I would say that it's created, like the people pleasing itself has created not necessarily so much time freedom, but it's created so much time freedom in my head, because I'm no longer consumed with what anyone else thinks. I'm only deciding for me, and I don't have to fill my brain up with 13 other tabs wondering what Joe thinks, or wondering what Sally thinks, or wondering, I only have to focus on my own human tab. And that's beautiful. And it's so freeing.
It is. It's like, it's the thing that whenever we take away the responsibility to please other people, the weight that gets lifted off of our shoulders is so profound that in itself, if you only do that on your healing journey, then so much will change. So much will change internally and in the external in your business as well. And I think that's so powerful. And I want to talk about something that I kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation, because I know it's so relevant to so many people listening. And that is the transition as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, into motherhood. And that was a big pivotal moment for you that you said brought up a lot, just a lot of junk. So could you kind of walk me through what that process was like for you in that transition?
Yeah. So I became a mom in June of 2021. And I became a business owner in March of 2020. So I was already a business owner for over a year before I became a mom. At the time that I became a mom, I was still working full time and running Southern Scribble behind the scenes as I could. And my daughter Memphis, she actually came a whole month early. So it was like, here you go. Let's add another thing to the plate, even though I already had 8 months to prepare, mind you.
I needed that last month.
Yeah. So, and if you know me, I'm a procrastinator. So, no. So whenever we rushed to the hospital and had her, we were in the NICU for a week. And I was still having to manage my full-time job while I was in the NICU and trying to make arrangements to like lessen my plate, but it still felt like so much. And so it's always been like a balance. Like the way I think of it is like, whenever you're you put a football underneath a skateboard and you're like trying to balance, that's what it feels like to be a mother and a business, because I feel like it's so hard to keep that balance. Like the skateboard just always wants to fall to one side or the other. So after we got out of the hospital, from July, August, September, that's when my postpartum depression and anxiety started coming in, and it was really affecting my mental health. So at that time, I really had to start kicking in that self-reflection of like, okay, what can I actually do? And I did make the decision to leave my full-time job. I know that that's not for everyone, but it was right for our situation, our decision. Financially, we were going to be okay. And I knew that taking care of my mental health was most important so that I could care for our new baby. And, you know, as she grew older, I felt like I had lost a sense of identity because I always found my identity in achieving. So this was another self-evolution that I had. And I am an Enneagram 3 achiever. So naturally, I love getting all of the validation and achieving things. So whenever she was 6 months old, we made the decision to put her in full-time childcare. Because I missed working. I love working. I'm a working mom, and I thrive when I can produce and, you know, make an income. And that's just what I love doing. So that was another struggle internally, battling with kind of that people pleasing, like, because my husband's family, they all stayed home with their babies, and so it was hard to not fall back into that people pleasing mindset.
Yeah. And I think that's a really big transition. And this is where I talk a lot about making sure that you're making decisions on your own. And I don't know if I haven't even talked to you about this, but I don't know if you saw recently what I'm transitioning with the kids with homeschool. And, you know, I've homeschooled all of them their whole life. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm just like done with it. There's a point to this because it's like, it's this external factor of expectations for a mother and a business owner as well. And then I was a homeschooling mom too for 4 kids. And I've gotten to the point where my business is just expanding so rapidly that I can't maintain the growth of the business and maintain their education. And I had to be really honest with myself and say, I don't want to homeschool anymore. I want to pour into my business. Like, it's time for that, which also gives to my family as well. So I had to come and be truthful with that. But that is a lot of judgment from the outside. And it was a lot of judgment for myself too. I mean, of course, I don't care what anybody else thinks, but I care what I think. And I was still judging myself. And it took me a minute to actually say, I don't want to do this anymore. Once I said it, I can't stop saying it. I'm like, I'm so done. Right. Yes, but it really comes with, it comes with questioning and understanding and coming into a good relationship with yourself. So then you can have that dialogue and that conversation of what that balance looks like and what it looks like for you and how you make that happen with your own family.
That's so good. Oh, that makes me so happy for you.
Us too, right? There's so much stuff, right? And that changes. Like, I never would have thought that was possible a year or 2 years ago. And I think that's really important too. And even your story has highlighted so many times about a pivot and a change and an acceptance and a letting go. That is such a common theme in your progression of your success, which leads me to my next question. I do not want to get off this call until we talk about it, is in your bio, you say that your journey began with $6 in your bank account and a leap of faith. So I know that people are questioning, and I know that money is a huge thing. That is a big hurdle and a challenge for many, many, many people. So what was that like for you? Tell me that story.
Yeah. So we started our business with $6 in our bank account. And I say we because my husband and I, we keep everything together. We are one person. We're probably super codependent on each other, but it's fine. Anyways, so in March of 2020, I was still working full time, and my husband was, he owned his own business with his dad doing tractor equipment work. And I was an office manager managing my boss's 7 companies. So you would think on the outside looking in, wow, they've got it all together. They're making money. But the reality was we had $6 in our bank account. And I at this time in our life, in our marriage, we were newlyweds. We had just gotten married about 5 or 6 months prior, and we were on another health journey that we had started, and we were attending a nutrition club every day. And the nutrition club owner had asked me to hand letter on some signs that she had, just to update her menus. She knew that I had pretty good writing. So she was like, "Hey, Megan, do you mind? We can trade it out in shakes and teas." And I was like, "Oh, perfect. Free food. Great." And so I was like, "Yeah, I would love that." And then, so I brought her signs home. It was like a big whiteboard and then a couple smaller chalkboards. And I did it in the living room in our home. And then a few days later, I brought it back to the nutrition club, and she loved them. She was so excited. And then after seeing her excitement, it made me feel excited for possibility. And so I went home that night and I told Derek, and I said, "Babe, you know what? I think that I could probably do this as a business. Like, I feel like I'm ready to own a business. I help you in your business. I manage my boss's 7 businesses. I want my own business. It's time for me." And he was like, "All right, I support you. What do we need to do?" And I was like, "Well, I think we probably need to start brainstorming some business names and some products that I could sell." So I got out a notepad. I still remember the notepad. It was like a Ray Dunn to-do list notepad. And then I had a second notepad and it had sunflowers on it. And one notepad, we started with business names. We came up with Chicken Scratch, which I thought was pretty cute. And then we ended up landing on Southern Scribble. And the other one, we wrote down product ideas. So we came up with like coffee mugs or canvases and things like that. So the next day, Derek went to work, I went to work, and normally he gets home after me. But today he was like on this day specifically, he was on a shorter job site day. So he got home before me. And I got home, and it turned out he had stopped at the Dollar General store. With the last $6 in our bank account, he bought 6 coffee mugs for $1 each. And he had them ready on the kitchen table when I got home with like the sweetest love note and I still have it, that says, "I believe in your dreams and I support you. You've got this, babe." And like, it was longer than that. But his support has just been literally the rock of who I am. And like, I wouldn't be where I am today without my husband. And it just makes me so grateful that he saw my big dreams and he believed in me. And now I get to do the same for women that are in business. They have these big dreams and they have this big possible, moment that they want to have. And all that they need is someone to believe in them and know that it's possible, and someone to give them the tools to help them achieve their big dreams. And I know that is, after all of the self-reflection, after all of the pivots, I know that is my purpose. And it just stems back to where my husband first supported me. And I'm so, so grateful.
That is like, I had to like pull it together because that is just, I freaking love your husband so much.
He's the best.
He's the best. That's amazing. And real fast, what did you turn those $6 mugs into? Did you make money off of those?
Yes. Yeah. We sold all 6 coffee mugs and made $60.
Yes. And
then last year we did 6 figures.
Yes.
And we're on track to do more than that this year.
That is freaking amazing. See, that is the beauty, the beautiful journey of this, of opportunity, right? And trust and support. And I think it's really important too that, I want to talk real fast because I know hearing this story for some people is they're not going to be like so happy for you. What it's going to do is it's going to trigger within them the lack of support that they have. right? It's
Mm.
the lack of support that they have from their spouse, from their family, from whoever. And so I think it's really important to recognize all the different spaces that we can find support. So if you were to give anyone any type of advice on where they could look for support and what that would look like, how could you encourage others to find support in a community so they can have what you have?
Gosh, that is so good. I love that. And that is something that's come up for us on our journey together now, especially now that we're able to run the business alongside each other. The question I get asked the most when it's in relation to Derek is how do you and your husband work together? And I told him the other day, I'm like, we should do a series on that. I think it would be so funny. Well, weekly couples therapy. Just kidding. No, community. So I would recommend plugging into some virtual networking groups. That's been really helpful for me, especially if you're not able to get out of the house and get into community. You know, women are a champion for women. And whenever you surround yourself with the right women, they will champion your success and be there for you no matter what. And so that's also been a huge factor in my business as well, is really surrounding myself with other like-minded women that are in business doing big, bold things and have those big, bold dreams that they want to achieve.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. There's so many different places to have support. And I think it's really important that you said the right women, because there's a lot of spaces out there that you'll find that are not right for you, and you do not need to stay in them. You can remove yourself. You can find that community that is right for you and supportive. So even if you're not getting the support at home, which I think, relates to me, it's not that my husband didn't support me when I first started. It was like we were living kind of two different lives, honestly. And he had his job, he was working, and then I had the home life. And so I was balancing homeschool, managing the home. I had a nonprofit as well, and then I was building my business. So it wasn't that there was like a lack. There wasn't, he wasn't anti what I was doing. There just wasn't a level of like understanding or investment in what I was doing. And so that sometimes came off to me like he wasn't supporting me, and he was just doing the best he could without understanding everything that involves running a business. And so I was looking for one, I had to trust myself and support. And then I leaned into groups and finding the women that would help support me as well in the spaces that I needed. And then now my husband works with me in the business also.
Awesome.
And so I know, right? And so it's one of those things that you look at and you can create all kinds of stories about what that looks like. So whether there's a nice little note in this beautiful, like, proclamation about, I believe in you, you can do this, or it's just that steady hand, or it's just a complete absence of it. The biggest thing here is that if you didn't believe in you, if I didn't believe in me, we wouldn't have created this success that we created.
Yeah.
Right? So support is helpful, but it's not the end all be all, because you have to support yourself and you have to trust yourself, right? You're the one that puts your stuff on the mugs. You're the one that sold the mugs. You're the one that, not you're the one. Derek did great too.
Yes.
Right. But you took the action. That's right. You took the action. You did the things. You trusted in yourself to put yourself out there. Because that's the thing, especially when you're doing any type of art or you're the center of creation, you're putting yourself out there in a different and vulnerable way. And I think it's really important to recognize that, yes, support and community is important. I very much recommend networking groups as well. There's a lot of online virtual groups that are great that I could recommend. I'll probably put some in the show notes. International groups that I'm a part of that are great, and local groups. And so you can search for your local women's group. I think that would be important as well. But support is wonderful, but you have to trust and support yourself, which is like the theme of this whole entire episode, is all coming back to you, saying yes to you over and over and over, and not waiting for validation from somebody else or even support from anyone else on the external. You started to learn to say yes to you. So if you were going to give the listeners a tip, like one thing that they can really just start to implement in their life, as far as like what you think is the most important space to focus on emotionally and healing to be able to really grow your business, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say the most attainable way to do this is to get out a pen and a piece of paper and start a daily reflection practice. This could be anywhere from 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe give yourself 3 things that happened throughout that day to either be grateful for, or maybe something that happened that was triggering for you. And you just kind of want to do a deeper dive on, why did that trigger me? Why am I grateful for this? And just kind of like do some like getting to know yourself better, and really start that self-reflection process on pen and paper. And then once you do it several times, you'll start to become more aware when the situations are actually happening. And it's truly about a knowing within yourself and saying yes to you. I love that.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. And just shameless plug here. I do have a method to walk you through from trigger to response. That was not planned. That doesn't organically happen. And I'll drop the information so you can actually do that journaling that Megan recommended, so you can identify your triggers and walk through it. So that will be in the show notes too. But Megan, it's been amazing having you here, and I want people to be able to be connected with you, work with you. So just share, what are your offers right now and how can people find you?
Yeah, right now we have our free Radiant Brand Blueprint, where it asks you a few questions, kind of doing some reflection on your business and who you serve. And then ways to work one-on-one with our agency is brand strategy. We start with that in the first phase. Then we move to brand identity. And then we have an option for brand photography, and then also website design and SEO. You can find us on southernscribble.com and Southern Scribble on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. I'm going to put all that so everyone can find you, track you down, follow you on all your socials, because you were just, I know you're absolutely a joy in my own personal life. So I am more than happy to share you with everyone. So that's it for today's episode. And I'm just so grateful you were here with me, Megan. And I'm so grateful for you all listening and staying tuned and listening to Megan's emotional revolution as she has evolved through all the challenges and all the growth. It's such a powerful story. So thank you all for being here. See you next week.
Thank you.